How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Vav. Why not? Daf Vav. Beis Gimel Dalet Hey. I think we're learning today Daf Vav of Masechta Avodah Zarah. Friends, your friends. Okay, so today actually I think isn't going to be so much Agadata, maybe? Yeah, I don't think it's so much Agadata today, but it's cool. It's cool. Alright, we're going to start on Daf Hey Amud Beis, about halfway through the Amud, let's say. There's a 2 dots. It says, Gimel Yom Asulosis Philosis Imoyim Vechule. So the Mishnah had said that when it comes to these Yomtivs, the Yom Edeim, it's interesting because even nowadays, I think there was just a Yomtiv in Gaza called Eid something. It's interesting, it's the same Eid thing, which is cool. So we said that before these Eid days, these Yomtivs, I'm just going to call them a Yomtiv, Yomtiv for the Getchkas, but they're Yomtiv. So before these Yom Tovim, so for 3 days, no business, no this, no that. Now, frag die Gemara, do we really need so much time? Does it really need to be for 3 days? And the pretext of the question is that, pretext or pretense? I think pretext. The pretext of the question is that, well, it seems to be that if you sell an animal 3 days, right, to an Ovid Kechavim, 3 days before his Yom Tif, he's going to slaughter it on the Yom Tif. The thing is, it seems like 3 days is a little bit much. It's a little bit overkill. 1 day, sure. 3 days, we don't assume that would be for the Yom Tif. So, do we really need to make this ban against doing business so far in advance? But we learned in a Mishnah in Chulin. 4 times a year, somebody who sells an animal to his fellow, you have to let him know, interesting. So there is a pasuk in the Torah that says that you can't slaughter a parent and child animal on the same day. So for example, if you slaughter a sheep on today, so then you cannot also slaughter that sheep's daughter today. So the Mishnah in Chulin says that there are 4 times a year when let's say a sheep monger can assume that any sheep that he mongs is going to be slaughtered that day. So one of them, for example, is Erev Pesach. Erev Pesach, a sheep monger can assume that any sheep that he mongs is, by the way, is mong a word? Dennis, I feel like if a monger, what does a monger do? He mongs, right? Right. So any sheep that he mongs on Erev Pesach is going to be slaughtered that day for the Korban Pesach. And therefore, if he mongs a mother sheep, he has a responsibility before selling the daughter sheep. He has a responsibility to tell the potential buyer that before you buy this sheep, you should know that I already sold this sheep's mother, and it could very well be that the mother's already been slaughtered. In which case, you can't slaughter this sheep today out of concern for Osov Ezbeno. And the same thing would happen the other way around, right? If you're selling the mother, you'd have to say to the potential buyer that I already sold the daughter, and therefore, it could be that the daughter's already been slaughtered, and you can't therefore slaughter this animal. You'll have to buy it for, I guess, another day or something. There's a responsibility on the monger to tell potential clients that the mother or daughter has already been sold, and because the assumption is that any animal that is going to be sold that day is going to be slaughtered that day, as opposed to today I'm recording this on a Monday morning. On a random Monday morning, you sell a sheep, so maybe it'll be slaughtered today, maybe tomorrow, maybe he needs it for the end of the week, whatever it might be. But on these 4 days that we're about to list, the assumption is that the animal will be slaughtered right away. And therefore, you have to inform the potential buyer about the mother-daughter thing. Here we go. Again, do we really need 3 days in advance, 3 days before the Yom Tov? But after all, we learned in a Mishnah in Chulin, that there are 4 times a year, that if a sheep monger mongs a sheep to his friend, so he needs to inform his friend that I already sold this sheep's mother for slaughter. Alternatively, if he's currently selling the mother, he would have to inform the potential buyer that I've already sold the daughter to be slaughtered, and therefore, you can't slaughter it on this day because we have to be concerned about Oisev as B'nai. And these are the 4 days. That on Hoshana Rabbah, on the last day of Sukkot before Simchas Torah, so any sheep that is sold on that day, the assumption is that it's going to be slaughtered the following day on Simchas Torah, as I believe for the Olas Riyah Shama Chagiga, if they haven't yet done it, so they could do it on Simchas Torah. Therefore, the assumption is that any sheep sold on Erev Simchas Torah is going to be, or Shmini Atzeres is going to be slaughtered on Shmini Atzeres, is my understanding. Right, isn't that what Rashi says? Yeah, I think so, right? Yeah, okay. Fine. Yeah. Yeah, I believe that the assumption is that it'll be slaughtered on Shmini Atzeres. Now, Erev Yom Tov Achron Shel Chag, Erev Yom Tov Arishin Shel Pesach, also an Erev Pesach for the Korban Pesach, Erev Atzeres, also on Erev Shavuos, the assumption is that it will be slaughtered on Shavuos, the Erev Rosh Hashanah, and also on Erev Rosh Hashanah, the assumption would be that it would be slaughtered on Rosh Hashanah, I believe. And according to Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, so also in the Galil, on Erev Yom Kippur, because there's a big mitzvah to eat a lot on Erev Yom Kippur, and therefore also you can assume that any sheep sold on Erev Yom Kippur are going to be eaten on that day. So there we're talking about we're not talking about any sheep that are sold 3 days before Yom Kippur or something. No, talking about the day before Yom Kippur or the day before Rosh Hashanah, whatever. We're not going back multiple days to right, and to assume that any animals that are bought are on those up to 3 days in advance are going to be slaughtered on Rosh Hashanah. Let's say, no, it's the day before. That's it. We don't have to go 3 days. So why all of a sudden by these Yom Eidayim are we going 3 days in advance? So also well, there, what are you doing with the animals? You're eating them. Okay, so let's go by there for a second. But by these by the Yom Eidei, and in our Mishnah, we're talking about offering these animals as a sacrifice, and for that you need to you want to make sure there's no mumim, right? There's more sort of particulars. You're going to want to keep an eye on it for a few days. Make sure that there's nothing wrong with the animal, so that you're offering the best possible animal for your getchke, and therefore, so when it comes to eating, so you don't need several days to observe, so you buy it, you slaughter it. So therefore, it could be that day, the next day. But when it comes to these Yom Tovim, so you're going to want a few days to make sure that in fact the animal is a healthy animal. So that's why you need 3 days. But okay, so if you're telling me that the reason why we need 3 days is because they're going to offer the animals as sacrifice, therefore it needs to be observed for several days in advance. The thing is, if we're talking about sacrifices, it should need more than 3 days. what's the gimel? Ve'otanya, we learn in the Brisa, she'alin bilchus apaisich kodem apaisich shloshim yom. That we already learned the halachis of Pesach, I guess Korban Pesach included, 30 days before Pesach. Rabbi Shimon says 2 weeks, but we're talking for sure longer than 3 days, and the assumption is that we're learning the halachis of Kilu Korban Pesach, so we know, right, that we get our animals already then, and we're observing them already then, and we're making sure that there's no movement already then. So if that's the case, that we're saying that we're talking about 3 days because we're talking about korbanis for these Yom Tevim of the Getchkis, so then how could it be just 3? I mean, by Korban Pesach it's 2 weeks at the very least. So on the shchiche mumin the pasta feel bedukin shebayin boyin tlasin yemin. So and for the Gemara, yeah, but the thing is that for our korbanos as Yidden, there's a lot more. We have stricter requirements, right? Even bedokin sheba'ayin, even if like I don't know, some kind of mum in the eye, like some kind of mum deficiency in the eye, so that would be enough to make it possible. So therefore, for Korban Pesach, Yitaka do need more time to observe, to make sure that there's none of these very specific kinds of movement. But for the Getchkes, inu the mechusar aver islu b'tlas yom isagi. But for them, look, if it's missing a limb, okay, so don't offer it. But so long as it's not missing a limb, so it's fine. 3 days should be plenty of time to see if it's missing a limb. How do we know that for the children of Noach, for the Bnei Noach, they do not offer mechusar avers, animals, as sacrifices that are missing limbs? The pasuk says, "Mikol achai, mikol basar, shnai mikol v'gomer." My understanding is mikol achai, for all those things that are living, mikol basar. I think maybe that's the point. Mikol basar, it has to be like a full animal. And then those animals are brought on the ark, so that later on they can be offered as korbanos. So it needs to be a full animal. It can't have a mum. You have to offer animals that all of its limbs are intact. But the Gemara, but that pasuk is not coming to teaching me about mechusar aver for korbanos of Bnei Noach. To say that they can't offer treifas, right? It says mikol achai, it has to be alive, I guess. It can't be a treifa. Nothing to do with mechusar aver, no. Treifa milachai zera nafka. So the assumption is that a treifa is incapable of having children. And the pasuk says, I imagine also by Noach, it says l'chai zera al pnei haaretz. It has to be able to have offspring. And a treifa, the assumption right now is that it cannot have offspring, so it is excluded from the pasuk of Milchayus Zera. And Mikol Achai is available to say that it can't be missing a limb. But so I can exclude treifa from L'chayus Zera if you say that treifas are incapable of having offspring. But if you say that treifas are capable of having offspring, well, if that's the case, then l'chayos zera does not exclude treifas, because treifas could also be l'chayos zera. So if that's the case, then how do we exclude treifas? Aren't we going to have to exclude it from mikol achai? Well, and for the Gemara, no. Amarkra itoch b'doimin loch. Well, the pasuk says by Noach, it says mikol achai. I'm reading the pasuk mikol achai b'chol behema shnai mikol tavi lateva lachayos itoch. Zochon keviyu, like you. And the assumption is that Noach was not a treifa. Noach was healthy, and therefore all the animals also had to be healthy, to the exclusion of treifas. And therefore the pasuk of mikol achai, mikol basar is available to say that the animals have to have all of their limbs. But how do you know? Maybe Noach Taka was a treifa. Maybe Noach Taka was a treifa. And he was saying, and just like you're a treifa, Noach, so then also the animals are treifas. Yeah, but Tom Ksivbe, Right, it says right. Noach ish tzaddik tomim hoya b'dorosav. Tomim, he was complete. He had no mum. He was a tam. But v'dilma tomim b'drochov. No, maybe tomim just means that he was a I don't know what the word I'm thinking of is, but he was a good mensch, a tomim, a good yid. Maybe that's what it means. But it could have been a treifa. Yeah, but tzaddik siv bei. Wait, was it treifa? Was it tomim siv bei? V'dilma tomim d'rochov hoya. Tzaddik siv bei. Yeah, but I guess the point is maybe it already says tzaddik. So I guess tzaddik means that he's a tzaddik, but tomim means that he was not a treifa, I guess. But v'dilma tomim b'drochov tzaddik b'maisav. Yeah, but maybe tomim means in his ways. He was good-mannered. And tzaddik b'maisav, and he did good deeds. But maybe he was a treifa. To which the Gemara says, hey, people, Noach was not a treifa, okay? That would make no sense. That would be mind-blowing to say that Noach was a treifa. The Rabbanu Shalom is destroying the whole world. He has this one guy create an ark. And in this ark, he's going to save all of humanity. And this one guy is a treifa, and he says itoch, and get a whole bunch of treifas into this ark, and that's going to save the future of the world, is this treifa and a bunch of defective animals. Makes no sense, okay? Impossible. Noach was healthy, and the idea was to get a bunch of healthy animals, and then after the flood, the Noach and his family and the animals would then repopulate the world. So therefore, get that out of your thick skull. That whatever. Get this concept out of your mind that Noach was a treifa, that the animals were treifas. They were not treifas. Okay, so lechayus is so therefore mikol achai mikol basar is not needed to exclude treifas, and mikol achai mikol basar means that the animals for bnei Noach for korbanos need to be fully limbed. Okay, fine. Now that we're learning that the animals were not treifas, that they were healthy animals from itoch, so then, and we're saying that mikol achai mikol basar is to say that they have to have all of their limbs. So there was another pasuk that we had quoted, l'chayos Zarah. What is l'chayos Zarah coming to teach us? Normally, what is that? We want to say that maybe that's coming to exclude treifas, but we scratch that. So me itoch hava amina litzavso be'alma. Well, if all we had was the pasuk of itoch, that they have to be like Noach, i.e. not treifas, well, that could just be to keep him company. Which is funny because Noach had his whole family with him, and he needed animals to keep him company. Therefore it says no, Zarah. It's not, the animals are not just for company. They can't just be old or castrados. They have to be animals that are capable of reproducing and repopulating the world. 1 second, should I stop here? Let's go back to it. They ask a kasha. Shlosha yamin heim ve'edein adumehein beloy edein. You hear the kasha? The kasha is, when the Mishnah talks about for 3 days preceding the Yom Tif, you can't do business with these Ovdei Kechavim. Is that 3 days including the Yom Tif? So really 2 days prior to the Yom Tif and the Yom Tif itself? Or is it 3 days in addition to the Yom Tif? I mean, maybe the Yom Tif you can't do business with them, but also separately 3 days before that. So is it 3 days including the Yom Tif or in addition to the Yom Tif? So is it the 3 days including the Yom Tif? Or maybe it is those 3 in addition, right? Not including the Yom Tif. Tashma Kamnir, Rabbi Yishmael Lema says, Rab Yishmael, Shlosh lefneim v'shlosh lacharein aser. So Bishmael says that not just 3 days before the Yom Tif are aser, but also the 3 days after the Yom Tiv are also Asr. Now, Isal Kadaitech Hein Ve'edein, and if you say that the 3 days includes the Yom Tiv, well then Vishlosh, so where am I? Isal Kadaitech Hein Ve'edein, Rabbi Shmuel, Yom Edein, Chashvlu Meikar, V'chashvlu V'asoy. But the thing is, Rabbi Shmuel says that it's the 3 days before and the 3 days after. If you say that the 3 days includes the Yom Tiv itself, well then the Yom Tiv is included both in the 3 days before and in the 3 days after. But really, if it's included already in the 3 days before, then really it's just 2 days after. It's not really 3, right? You can't include the Yom Tiv itself both before and after. You can't include it the same day twice. Well, yeah, you can, because either the Tana Shlosh Lefneim, Tananami Shlosh Lachreim. Well, no, you can. Meaning you can say that it includes the Yom Tiv itself. The 3 days includes the Yom Tiv itself, and the 3 days before includes the Yom Tiv itself. And yeah, afterwards it's really just 2 days afterwards, because the Yom Tiv itself was already included in the 3 days beforehand. But the reason why it doesn't say 3 days before and 2 days afterwards is because for consistency. We say 3 days before, 3 days after, but really it's 3 days before including the Yom Tiv, as well as 3 days after including the Yom Tiv. And yes, the Yom Tiv is included twice. Tashma da Amr of Tachlifa by Avdim Yomer Shmuel. Says of Tachlifa by Avdim Yomer Shmuel. Yom Echel Div Rabbi Shmuel le'olam Aser. So now listen to this. Of Tachlifa by Avdim, says Nevi Shmuel, that Shmuel had said that it's the 3 days before and they're Aser and the 3 days afterwards, which is interesting because Sunday, of course, is a Yom Tiv for the Christians. I think Sunday, where I am right now in Bergen County, New Jersey, they have the blue laws, where businesses can't be open on Sundays. Sundays is a Yom Tiv, I think, for the Christians. So the interesting thing is, if you're Reb Yishmael and you say 3 days before their Yom Tiv and 3 days after their Yom Tiv, so technically you can never do business with them, right? Sunday, and then 3 days beforehand is Saturday, Friday, and Thursday. 3 days afterwards is Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So be'etzem, you can't do business with them Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, as well as Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. You can never do business with them, right? So again, so Tashmata Amr of Tachlifa by Avdimi Amr Shmuel Yom Echel Divrei Rabbi Shmuel L'Olam Aser. According to maybe I just said Shmuel, but according to Rabbi Shmuel, who says, right, meaning Rabbi Tachlifa by Avdimi says in the name of Shmuel, that according to Rabbi Shmuel, who says that there's 3 days before and 3 days afterwards, in effect, you can never do business with Avodah Kochavim because there's 7 days in a week. There's every Sunday is a Yom Tiv, 3 days before and 3 days afterwards. You can never do business. Now, if it enters your mind that it includes the Yom Tiv itself, well then, there are actually 2 days a week that, according to Rabbi Shmuel, you'd be able to do business, right? There's Wednesday and Thursday, right? Because if you say that it includes the Yom Tiv, so then if every Sunday is a Yom Tiv, so then the 2 days prior and the 2 days post are Asr. So basically, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday are Asr, but Wednesday and Thursday would be permitted. But we said that according to Rabbi Shmuel, the entire week becomes Asr. So clearly then it's excluding the Yom Tiv. So Rabbi Shmuel loy kami ba'yali. And for the Gemara, look, I'm not asking about Rabbi Shmuel. Yes, the Hein B'lo Eidein, according to Rabbi Shmuel, yes, of course, it's talking about 3 days in addition to the actual Yom Tiv, which is why you could effectively never do business with the Avodah Kochavim, because every Sunday plus the 3 days in addition before as well as afterwards, you can effectively never do business with them. So yes, according to Rabbi Shmuel, it's clear that the 3 days are in addition to the Yom Tov itself. The kasha is, what about according to the rabbis from our Mishnah? When they say 3 days, is it including the Yom Tov or excluding the Yom Tov? Okay, I think I need to switch the video now. Omar Ravina says, Ravino, Tashma, come in here. These are the aids, these Yom Tevim of the Avodah Kochavim. Klanda, Satrunaya, V'kartosim, from Rav Chanan Baraba klanda ches yom achar tkufa satrunya shmona yom lifnei tkufa v'simonach achar v'keden satani. Okay, we'll get there. Whatever, we'll get there. I think maybe tomorrow, and daf ches in 2 days. But the point, without getting into the details, the point is that some of the Yom Tovim are 8 days, right? We said Satronai is 8 days before Tkufas Tev is Klanda is 8 days after. Some of the Yom Tovim are 8 days. Now the thing is, if you say that the 3 days exclude the actual Yom Tiv, okay, so 3 days before the Yom Tiv, no matter how many days the Yom Tiv is, 1 day, 8 days, 1,000 days, makes no difference. 3 days before the Yom Tiv starts, it's awesome. But if you say that the 3 days includes the Yom Tiv, well then in the case of an 8-day Yom Tiv, it's not actually 3 days, it's 10 days, right? Because day 3 of the quote-unquote 3 days is the Yom Tiv itself. So you have 2 days before and then the Yom Tiv itself. If the Yom Tiv itself is 8 days plus the 2 days before, it's actually 10 days. It's not 3 days. If you say that the 3 includes the Yom Tiv itself, Asara havu, well then it would be 10 days, not 3 days in that case. So Tana Kule Klando Chad Yoimahu Choshiv Le. To which the Gemara answers, meh. Basically, when the Mishnah says 3 days, it means 3 days, including the Yom Tif, no matter how long the Yom Tif is. Kilu, we're referring to day 3 as the Yom Tif, even if it's an 8-day Yom Tif, Kilu, the Tana is referring to it as day 3, Kilu, day 3 representing the Yom Tif, no matter how long it is. Amar Vashi says, Vashi Toshma, come here, lifnei edain shel avdei kochavim shloisha yom. Well, it says before the Yom Tif 3 days. And if you said that it includes the Yom Tif, well, lesnei, it should say edain shel avdei kochavim shloisha yom. It should say that the Yom Tif is 3 days. Okay, included, like it's a package. And if you can say, well, yeah, but it has to say lifnei to say that, well, these 3 days are, the Yom Tiv plus 2 days before rather than after. Well, lesni edam shel ovdei kochavim gimel yomim lifnei. Still, you could say that the Yom Tiv is 3 days beforehand. Rather, we're talking about 3 days separate from the Yom Tiv itself. And now the Gemara asks, what's the nature of this prohibition bichlal? We're saying before the Yom Tiv, for 3 days, no business. Why? What's the concern? Well, 2 options. One option is that, well, if you do business, he's going to feel good. I'm in business is going well, and you know what he's going to do? Comes the Yom Tif, he's going to give such a hakaras hatov to his getchke that you can't imagine. That he's gonna because he's doing so good, he's doing business with the Yidden, so he's going to thank his getchke. And the pasuk says, as Rashi points out, lo yishama al picho, that we don't want getchkes being referenced at all on our account, and therefore, because we don't want him to give hakaras hatov to his getchke, so we say for 3 days prior to the Yom Tiv there's a freeze. There's a business freeze. The other option is if you sell him a sheep, he might mamish slaughter it for his Avodah Zarah. As we know from Masechta Sanhedrin, zvicha is one of the zibuach is one of the globally forbidden forms of getchking, and therefore. Or maybe it's lifnei v'lo michshol, that if you sell him a sheep, you're basically, of course, Pnei Noach are prohibited from serving getchkes, and therefore selling him a sheep is basically setting him up for failure because he's gonna slaughter that sheep for his getchke. So that's the shali. That's the kasha mishum arvacha. Is the prohibition because we want to prevent him from giving hakaras hatov to his getchke, or maybe it's that we want to prevent a scenario of selling him an animal that he will then use in service of his getchke. Tell me what's a practical difference between whether it's this or that. Well, the isle behem l'didei. Well, what if he already has an animal? So if he already has a sheep, okay, if he already has a sheep, can I sell him another one? He already has a sheep to offer, right? So I'm not. It's not like I'm providing him with the sheep so that now he can serve his getchka. He can serve his getchka anyways. He has a sheep. So if you say it's lifnei v'lasita michshol, well, there's no michshol over here. He already has a sheep. What am I doing? I'm just selling him another sheep. But I'm not enabling him to serve the getchka. He can already serve the getchka. But if you say it's because of giving akara satov to his getchka, well, if I sell him a sheep, he might give akara satov to his getchka for giving him the wherewithal to be able to purchase a sheep. So again, so the Isla be'emid lide, 4 lines from the bottom of Vav Amud Al. If you say that the concern is he's going to give akara satov, so he very well may give akara satov when you sell him this second sheep. But if the concern is about lifnei iver, well, there's no concern there because he already has what he needs to do the Avodah Zarah. Ha'islei lidide, he already has a sheep to worship the getchka with, so you're not technically changing the scenario because he already has what he needs to do Avodah Zarah. V'chi'islei loy avar mishum iver l'sitim mechshol, but frak the Gemara, this assumes that, meaning we're saying, well, if he already has a sheep that he can offer, if the only concern is of lifnei iver l'sitim mechshol, and he already has a sheep, so I could sell him another sheep because I'm not the one enabling him to do the Avodah Zarah because he already has a sheep to worship with. But is that really true? That when he already has what he needs to do the Avera, it's mutter for me to kind of like give him more things that he needs to do the Avera? But V'yatani, we learn by some Nosen, says of Nosen, the assumption for now is that what this means is, how do I know that, for example, if you have a Nazir, right, you're having lunch, you go out to a restaurant for lunch with a Nazir, and there's wine on the table, how do you know that you shouldn't pour a glass of wine for the Nazir? Now, the Nazir can pour his own glass of wine. I mean, it's not like you're the reason why he's drinking wine. The wine's on the table. If he wants to, he could drink it himself. And yet, I'm not allowed to pour him a glass of wine. Even though I'm not who's enabling him to do the wine was there, he could have poured his own glass. And yet, I'm still not allowed to do it. Alternatively, lifnei Ever min achai. But if there's Ever min achai, right, how do I know that I can't give a ben noyach? Right, there's a piece of there's an animal leg just lying on the floor that you ripped off of the animal just a minute ago. Right, it was ripped off of the animal. So how do I know that I can't give it to the ben noyach? Now he could take it himself, but still I can't give it to him. Even though he's already able to do it on his own, I still can't contribute to that experience for him. Right? And as I explained, in this case, even if I wouldn't have facilitated it, even if I wouldn't have given the Nazir the glass of wine, even if I wouldn't have given the Ever min achai to the Ben Noyach, he could have taken it himself. He already had the wherewithal to violate the Avera, and yet I'm in violation of the Lifnei Iver Lo Sitin Michshol. So therefore, applied to our case, it would seem like if the Oved Kochavim already had a sheep, so he already has what he needs to serve the Getchke if he wants to. Still, based on this, I would think I would still be not allowed to sell him another sheep, even though he could have already done the Avera on his own. They could betray every naira. To which the Gemara says, actually no. The case by the Nazir and by the Ever min achai is that, let's just take the Ben Noyach for a second. It's talking about where you're on two different sides of the river, and actually, if you didn't give the Ever min achai to the Ben Noyach, he would not have been able to get it on his own, and that is why you're chai. But if he would have been able to get it on his own, well then you would be potter. And therefore, we could say here as well, if the Oved Kochavim already has a sheep, you would be allowed to sell him another one. It would not be a violation of Lifnei Iver Lo Sitin Michshol. Let's read it inside again. So Hachav Ma'askin here, what are we talking about? The Koi betray every Naira. It's talking about where the Aver ben Achai and the Ben Noach are on two separate sides of a river, and if not for you giving it to the Ben Noach, he would be unable to get it. So you really are facilitating his doing of the Aver. You could also infer that this is the case. It says don't hand it to him. It doesn't say just don't give it to him, but don't like pass it to him. Like don't like don't stretch out your arm over the river to give it to him. Right? So it's not talking about just simply giving it to him that he would have been able to get it on his own, but it's like you're extending it to him because he would not have been able to get it. Otherwise, they ask a kasha. Nosav nosan mai. What if, what am I getting up to over here? Okay, fine. Great. What if you did do business? Okay? So it's within the 3 days, and you do business with an Ovid Kechavim. Now what? Is the profit that you made Osir Ba'anoya? If you sold him a sheep and he paid you $100, is the $100 100 zuzes? Is the 100 zuzes? I feel like a sheep is 25 zuzes. Betray zuzeh. Chad gadya. Betray zuzeh. A sheep is 2 zuzes. There you go. 100 zuzes is way overpriced. 2 zuzes. Trey zuzeh. So are those 2 zuzes osir ba'anoya or not? Maybe the taka mutter. So again, if you taka sold him a sheep, what happens to the 2 zuzes? Rabbi Yochanan Omar nosav nosin osir. Rish Lakish Omar nosav nosin mutter. Machlekes Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan says osir. Rish Lakish says mutter. A nice clean machlekes. Eitz Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan asks a kasha to Rish Lakish. A day in shel oivdei kechavim. That we have a brayse that says that on the Yom Tov itself, nosav nosin osir. If you do business on the Yom Tov itself, well, then the 2 zuzes are osir. But my lab, what does that imply? Lifnei edein, lo. I'm sorry, my lab, hu adin, I think you have to add the words, hu adin lifnei edein. So, Reb Yechanan wants to argue that just like on the Yom Tov itself, the trei zuzeh would be osir, so the same would apply to the 3 days prior. Lo. No, you can answer edein davka. No, it's davka on the Yom Tov itself that the trei zuzeh are asurin, but on the days prior they would be just fine. That it would be mutter to, right? The trei zuzeh would be mutter. Ikadam, those who say from the opposite perspective. Eis Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish to Rabbi Yochanan, to Rish Lakish who asked the kasha Rabbi Yochanan, Edein shel oivdei kechavim nosav nosan osir, that on the Yom Tov itself, if you do business, the trei zuzeh are osir edein in lifnei edein lo. That davka on the Yom Tov itself, the proceeds are, right, the profit is osir. But on the days prior, it would be mutter, argues Rish Lakish. Tana, idi v'idi, edein kari lei. To which the Gemara answers, you can argue that it's not such a stark raya. You could say that the Tana is referring to both the Yom Tov itself as well as the days prior as edein, and it's osir in all of the days you can argue. Tanakavas to Rish Lakish, but now we have a brayse taka supporting Rish Lakish. When we say that it's also to do business with the Oivdei Kechavim, le'osu ela b'dovra miskayim. What's also is something that will last until the Yom Tov. For example, a sheep, it will last 3 days. But something that is not going to last, then that would be okay. And even with something on Miskayim, even with something that we said you're not allowed to do business with, because it will last until the Yom Tov, nonetheless, Nasa v'nosin mutter. If you did business anyways, mutter, like Rish Lakish. Tanu Rav Zvid, b'dvei Rab Oshaya, davar she'em Miskayim, mochrin loim, aval ein lokrim mim. That a davar she'ein Miskayim, are things that won't last, mochrin loim, we could sell to them, but we can't buy it from them. We could sell them things that aren't going to last until the Yom Tov, but we can't buy from them things that won't last till the Yom Tov, because since they're in a sort of under pressure to sell it, since it won't last till the Yom Tov. So by you buying it, they will be thankful and they can give Hakaras Hatov to their Getchke. Haumina de Shadr le Dinra ke Sarnoya le Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya. There was a certain min, a heretic, who sent a freshly minted coin to Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya Yom Edo, and it was on the day of his Yom Tov, of the heretic's Yom Tov. Have Yosef Rish Lakish Kame, and Rish Lakish was there with Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya when he received this freshly minted coin. Amr Echi Avid, and Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya says, I'm in a bit of a bind, because what do I do? Ashkele Azulamodet. Well, if I accept the coin, he's going to give Hakaras Hatov to his Getchke. I guess it's some kind of a good luck kind of thing, good energy that he gives this coin to Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya. Okay. Lo Ashkele, but if I don't accept it, Havile Evahu, then that will create bad vibes. Bad relations, negative relations, and we don't want friction. So Amalei Rish Lakish Tolozok also lebor befonav. So Rish Lakish says, this is what you should do, Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya. Ataka was by Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya's kever. He's buried right next to Abaye and Rava and Rav Papa, right next to Tzvas. We went there on Pesach. Now. So Rish Lakish says, Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya, this is what you should do: take the coin and throw it into a pit. Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya says, wait, but then it's going to create a bad relationship. Why would I do that? So no, I'm not saying just take it and chuck it into a pit. What I'm saying is make it look like a mistake. So Kelu accept it from him, but then also, oops, accidentally it fell into the pit. So in that case, he's not going to give Hakaras Hatov to his Getchke, because ultimately he wanted to give you the coin and that didn't succeed. At the same time, he's not going to be upset because, make it look like it was an accident. So he won't be upset. So he said that we may not lend to them, nor can we lend from them, like to borrow an item from them. So I understand why we can't lend like an animal, let's say, to them, because they are benefiting from it. They're going to give Hakaras Hatov to the Getchke. But why can we not borrow from them items? They're losing right now. Right? We get all the hana, right? That's the whole thing about borrowing, right? Kol hana shelo. We get he's losing, we're gaining. So well, because you can't lend it to them, so we also say don't borrow from them. Rav Amar Kula Mishum Da'azul Modehu. Whereas Rav says no, it's all because he's going to give Hakaras Hatov to his Getchke. Even when he lends, he gives Hakaras Hatov to his Getchke for being in a position. He's thankful that he's in a position where he's able to lend, not just lend, but like lend to a Jew, and the Jew is dependent on him even. Lalvosam v'lilvos man, and similarly to lend to them as well as to borrow money from them. So I understand why we can't lend money to them, because they're benefiting, right? They needed money, they got money, they're going to give Hakaras Hatov to the Getchke. Lilvos man amai, but why can we not borrow money from them? They are losing money in the transaction. They're giving away money. So Abai says, well, it's a gezerah that we can't borrow money from them out of a concern that we want to make sure not to be lending money to them. Whereas Rava similarly says that no, it's all because of giving Hakaras Hatov to the Getchke. Yeah, certainly if we lend to them, you can give Hakaras Hatov to the Getchke, but even lending to us, also, he's thankful that he's in a position where we will be able to. He'd be thankful that he's in a position where he's able to lend, to a Yid, and the Yid is dependent on him, and he has so much. He'll be thankful for that. And a third similar example, same kind of template, to pay them back and to be paid back from them. I understand why we cannot pay them back, because they will be benefiting and therefore they're going to give Hakaras Tov to the Getchke. But to be paid back from them, that should be okay. They're losing. So Amar Abai Gezer Lefroy Men Atu Lefor On. So says Abai, yes, but there's a Gezerah not to be paid back from them, since we also don't want to pay them back during this period. Rava Omar Kula Mishum Da'azul Modehu, whereas again, Rava says that it's all out of concern that they will give Hakaras Tov to the Getchke, because even paying back, they will be thankful that they were able to pay back. And we need all three. We need all of the scenarios. We need loses veloses. We need she'ela. We need halva. We need peiraon. The tana loses veloses. And if we only had, don't do business with them, because they're going to make a profit. And he's going to give Hakaras Tov to his getchke. But to borrow from them, where they are losing, they're borrowing something, they're lending out an object where they gain nothing. So maybe that would be okay. And if we said no, you can't borrow from them, mishum de chashiva le milsa, well, because it's chashuv that they have something that the Yidden don't, and while yes, they're losing by giving it away, but they're also thankful that they're in a position where they are in the position of kind of strength, of power that they have, and they're in a position to be able to lend out. Aval lilvos me'em, but to borrow from them, tzara ba'alma isle. But lending out money, who likes to lend out money? Omer tuv lo hadre zuze. I'm not going to get back what I lent, right? Milva lo tzonitna, right? It's not like I'm even getting back what I lent out. He's going to give me back other stuff, and he's like, meh, this is no fun. So maybe that would be okay. V'itana lilvos me'en, and if we said you're also not allowed to borrow money from them, mishum deka'amar bal korche mifraina v'hashta mia ozulamode, right? And if you're going to say, okay, fine, so you're not allowed to borrow money from them because, like, yeah, sure, I mean, it's not fun for him to lend out, but he says, look, we have a contract, he's definitely going to pay me back. And he's going to say, okay, fine, he's going to give Hakaras Tov to his getchke. Have a lipara men, but to be paid back from them, the sulo hadre zuze. He's never going to get that back. He's paying back. He's never getting the money back. And he's like, oh, this is really no fun. So imatzara islay v'lo azulamod tzricha. You might think, well, that's not a fun experience for him, and he's going to go and give and maybe that would be okay because he's not going to give Hakaras Tov to his getchke. We say no, even in that case. You're not allowed to do it. He'll be happy that he was able to pay it back, and he'll give out Hakaras Tov to his getchke. Chaver friends, we are going to head off now. I got to run. Peace out. I hope you enjoyed. Bye.